Okay, so the age group that I would be reading this book to are going to be the beginning readers, which are like 5 to 7, so kindergarten and first grade. So at this stage in their learning, they're starting to get into really appreciating humor in their stories. It keeps them engaged. They're very engaged in um, illustrations, and then at this point they're able to make connections in the book into things that from other books, like contextual evidence and clues, and maybe even apply any sort of theme to their life. um, in addition to this, their vocabulary is starting to get up. They can read independently, but I think that given this stage in their learning, that they would be able to discuss with each other and really get a good conversation going. I'll be reading Tacky the Penguin by Helen Lester, illustrated by Lynn Munsinger, and it was published in 1988. I picked this book because I had a mother who was a first grade teacher and kindergarten teacher, and she used this for her class, and the kids really enjoyed it, and it has good meanings, good illustrations, and meets a lot of criteria for what children may like at that age. As far as interest in age appropriateness, the children, like I said, are getting into a point where they really like goofy books, and this has some funny parts, and it is very much about the illustrations when you're reading this, because they're so vivid and there's so many colors, and um, beyond that, it just breeds good conversation. As far as prep work, there are a few things we can do. Number one, we could have a discussion on being yourself, perpetuating like the main themes of the book. You could talk about like not falling into peer pressure, doing being yourself, and not feeling any sort of way about how you're different than other people, and how we can celebrate differences. Beyond that, we can also talk about the illustrations, go through it, like be like a little preview, and then we could talk about words that they may not understand. Like some young kids may not know what companions means, like it means friends, but or like people that you're with, they may not understand, or words like waddle, just anything that they may not know in advance. Obviously, I've read the book before and would prepare by reading again and finding all of this information, and we could have a discussion that would be obviously lighthearted. The book is lighthearted, but it gets them to begin thinking. So we'll go ahead and start. Tacky the Penguin by Helen Lester, illustrated by Lynn Munsinger. There once lived a penguin. His home was a nice icy land he shared with his companions. His companions were named Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect. His name was Tacky. Tacky was an odd bird. Every day, Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect greet each other quietly and politely. Tacky greeted them with a hearty slap on the back and a loud, "What's happening?" And we could discuss the illustration, how the other penguin is about to fall into the water, which I'm sure would meet the humor that these kids are looking for. Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect always marched 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tacky always marched 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 6, 0, 2.5, 0. And you can talk about how he's tumbling over, ask the kids what they see, and have them engage with the illustration. His companions were graceful divers. Tacky liked to do splashy cannonballs. Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect always sang pretty songs like Sunrise on the Iceberg. Tacky always sang songs like How Many Toes Does a Fish Have? Tacky was an odd bird. And even to make the kids laugh at that point, I could sing it out in what would probably be really off tune, which would make them laugh even more. And we could talk about the illustrations because you can see Tacky singing his heart out, playing the accordion. One day, the penguins heard the thump, thump, thump of feet in the distance. This could mean only one thing. Hunters had come. They came with maps and traps and rocks and locks, and they were rough and tough as the thump, thump, thump grew closer. The penguins could hear the growly voices chanting, "We're gonna catch some pretty penguins. We'll march them with a switch. We'll sell them for $1 and get rich, rich, rich." Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect ran away in fright. They hid behind a huge block of ice. Tacky stood alone. The hunters marched right up to him, chanting, "We're going to catch some pretty penguins, and we'll march them with a switch, and we'll sell them for $1, and we're going to get rich, rich, rich." "What's happening?" blared Taggy, giving one hunter an especially hearty slap on the back. They growled, "We're hunting for penguins. That's what's happening." "Penguins?" said Tacky. "Do you mean those birds that march neatly in a row?" And he marched 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 6, 0, 2.5, 0. The hunters looked puzzled. And at this point in the story is when we can start getting into further conversations of being yourself and how being yourself always plays out the best. "Do you mean those birds that dive so gracefully?" Tacky asked. And he did a splashy cannonball, and the hunters looked wet. "Do you mean those birds that sing such pretty songs?" Tacky began to sing. From behind the block of ice came the voices of his companions, all singing as loudly and dreadfully as they could. "How many toes does a fish have, and how many wings on a cow? I wonder, yep, I wonder." And at this point, I'm sure the kids will be laughing and doing their own impression, and we may be able to do that just for a minute before moving into the next story. And then at this point, we could even incorporate like themes of teamwork, which is definitely like a developing quality in kids this age at this point in their life. The hunters could not stand the horrible singing. This could not be the land of the pretty penguins. They ran away with their hands clasped tightly over their ears, leaving behind their maps and traps and rocks and locks, and not looking at all rough and tough. And then we can talk about how the illustrations, they can relate to the fact that this is more context clues to what the text is saying. Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect hugged Tacky. Tacky was an odd bird, but he was a very nice bird to have around. We show on the last illustration, and then from here is where the post-reading like engagement happens. There could be a couple activities. So for starters, we could spend time a little bit discussing. We could ask them what they think the main theme is, because at this point is when they're starting to relate to themes. We could talk about the setting, even the plot, if that's something that we discussed at that point in the year, and we can see if they have any connections to anything else. we could have an activity where they do a written assignment, almost like a summary, as much as you can do with first graders in kindergarten. There could be a worksheet asking questions about the book that they answer. And then after the read aloud, we could have them work on it, and then we could have them end up having a group discussion. I remember when I was younger, we may even read the book more than once. When I was in first grade, see if there was anything that we missed, um, and just see if there's anything different that they get from the story.